just like honey, sweet to taste on burning lips. Wanna lie beneath the water, feeling icy fingertips. Soothing nectar to my body, wash the image from my eyes. Dirty streets of hungry people, drink the water, dry your eyes. Let's not look at the reflections, listen to the music made. Drinking water's ease the mind, thoughts of you begin to fade.
No, they're not going to change. Hello, our compadres all over the world. I see we have Keith Boyd here from New Zealand at 1:04 p.m. over there, south of the border, like real south of the border, like in a different hemisphere. We've got Veg, we've got Joey, we've got I don't know. We've got so many people here. It's not even funny. We got at least 10 people here. And we have some people incognito. So, again, this is Divided We Stand. If you're not familiar with this channel, you've stopped off at the right place at the right time. If you enjoy what you see, not my face, but if you enjoy the show, please subscribe to our channel. We're not monetized. We don't look for anything from you. We just like to commiserate, share ideas. If you're familiar with our Facebook page, it's called the Facebook Divided We Stand group page. It's a group of around 13 or 1,400 people across the country who are like-minded about the Republican Party. We don't think that we can get along with them. However, that doesn't preclude you from being a subscriber to this channel if you are a Republican. We are open to debate, of course, but divided we do stand, nonetheless. Well, it's that time again, ladies and gentlemen. He's back in force. He really is. And that would be our buddy from Arlington, Virginia, also kind of known as Washington, D.C. It's kind of like close enough, it's in spitting distance. Dave, how's Dave Price doing?
Good. I do wish again, I'll start the show until you decide to come to your senses. Please, Brian, for the audience, well, first of all, for your family, then for the audience, then for America, and then for the whole world, grow some more hair. Quit shaving your head, okay? You're looking more and more like a member of a biker gang or Aryan Nation. It's just bothering me.
Those would be the last thing that I was, but no, I could try to grow the hair, but unless you're talking about my ears or my underarms, it's not going to happen.
No. Yes, it is. You do not need to shave your head. Trust me.
All right. You want me to? It'll look bizarre. It's got to look organized and in perspective, so to speak. And it's not when you let hair grow here and not up here. It's just too crazy. Now I understand why Mr. Clean did what he did. Well,
I know Mr. Clean, and you're no Mr. Clean.
Well, I didn't realize you're so into guys being hirsute, but we'll take it.
What?
The advice.
Okay. Enough frivolity.
Foolery and frivolity, right?
All right,
you,
Brian,
Dave.
I'll come with the question to you.
All right.
All the things going on in America and the world today, especially keeping under the parameters of Divided We Stand, because, of course, just about anything you talk about, there's going to be two sides to it, us and them. What's got you thinking this week? If not worrying, at least thinking.
Well, number one, as the title suggests, I'm not worried about the debt ceiling. I'm worried about the problem of the Republicans because, again, as the title suggests, this is financial terrorism. And you know as well as I do that there's not much the Republican Party will not do to try to upend not President Biden, but democracy itself. And they will try everything. This is just from stalling here, stalling there, Supreme Court, states. Now they want to bring us down monetarily. It's really, really, they're doing more against this country than the Russians or the Chinese ever could. And unfortunately, I don't think people realize, even if they don't get away with this, I don't think they realize what they're doing. I mean, you can't look at what they're doing with a blind eye, and you can't just assume that McCarthy's trying to take care of the debt problem, because it's not a debt problem. The debts were already there. It's paying back. It's not in the future what you are going to spend. It's now. The bill is here. It has to be paid. And you know as well as I do that you've got to pay your bills. And that's the issue. And that's what we're going to look at first at this program.
Okay, so the question becomes, I think, twofold. One is a person would ask or should ask, well, okay, what does the debt ceiling problem, issue, mean for me? A lot of times people, they want, and rightfully so, they want to know, what does it mean for me? And then the second thing is, what are the alternatives? What options are out there for a resolution of what essentially be the United States defaulting? Like you said, it would be like any single person saying, I'm not paying my bills. I'm just not. Do what you will. So what about those questions? Tackle them in the order you want. What does it mean to the average person? And what are the alternatives, or what can be done between now and the deadline, which is fast approaching?
Well, there are different aspects. There's aspects with business, which will then affect the consumer. There's the aspects that will affect you and me. The fact that there will not be money for these programs which need to be paid off. For example, the various programs, social programs that need to be taken care of. Everything can go south quick. But most importantly, as I said on a previous show about the bond market, and that's really a big problem, because the whole system could crash. If the whole financial system crashes in the United States, then it really crashes around the world, and then you go to a place, you go into the rabbit hole, basically. And the Republicans, and we're not talking about the average Republican. We're talking about the Marjorie Taylor Greens. They're the ones that have put the screws to McCarthy, and McCarthy was obviously being willing enough to be a political whore to go along with it. They are willing to make this thing crash, because those are the real people, the MAGA group that is really causing the problem. But they will make everything crash, and then if everything crashes, then you could have a worldwide depression. So there's so many angles to look at this, and any one of them could occur, and we're going to look at these. And who better than Paul Krugman? Paul Krugman was a Nobel economist. He was interviewed by Al Franken. I think Al Franken is an honest player when it comes to giving an interview, and what he thinks about the way this thing should be handled. I think that's what we're going to look at tonight. So we'll cover all of that, okay? But I think we got to do it piece by piece. And
all right, pick up with a P.
Okay, well, let's again. Let me. I can't reiterate enough that, first of all, the debt ceiling, okay, has to do with the fact that we have to pay our bills that we already purchased. So it has to be. It's not something about, hey, we got to cut our budget in the future. It's something that already had to be paid. And the Republicans, of course, they, in their administrations, they always voted to pass. In fact, it was even worse under Trump. The debt ceiling kept going up, way up. And, of course, the Democrats knew they had to agree with it. The only time, Dave, that we had this problem before was in 2011. And that's when, of course, Obama kind of caved in. And this is a second caving in of Obama, where he caved in with the reconciliation with the Supreme Court, and this with the debt crisis. And here we are again, but it doesn't look like Biden's going to give in. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take us to various pieces of this interview. I thought it was interesting. This is just a sidebar here. Is that the beginning of Franken's broadcast has the song Julie's House from Leo Kottke, which is like one of my favorite tunes. It's really, really cool. But you asked Dave a couple of weeks ago about the effects, and I was mentioning the bond market, because it was 2011 when the bond market, bonds are loans to the government. The treasury bills, they all have a rating. So they're rated AAA, which means they've never defaulted. But in 2011, when the Republicans pulled this crap with Paul Ryan, it lost a plus. They went to like a AA, and that can cost lots of dollars because it's trust. But again, let's first talk about the AAA rating and see what we can do here. I'm going to move it ahead to 140 or so, and you'll tell me if you can't hear this. Okay,
I will tell. I will tell you. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, Brian is about 20% getting it right the first time on video.
Okay, well, let's hope.
So bear with Brian.
Okay, now tell me if you can hear this. Did you hear that?
I did not hear it, nor did I see anything.
All right. Hold on. I actually set this prior to. Okay, we're good. We're going to be good. We'll try that one more time. It should be good now.
The agreement came at the
Yes? No.
No, heard briefly.
The agreement?
Voice, but no video.
All right, hold on. All right, let's try this again.
11th hour, so late that
Nothing?
No, again, sound but no video.
Oh, no video?
No video.
Oh,
no.
okay. Oh, you want video too? Oh, geez, you're asking for too much here. Okay, hold on for a second.
No, I'm asking for competence.
Okay. All right, I was too excited here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so you can see it now, right? So here we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, we're good.
Standards and Poor's downgraded our treasury bonds from AAA to AA plus, which ended up costing us billions of dollars. But I signed on to the deal, as did every Democrat, because otherwise we would have defaulted and gone off the cliff and possibly send the worldwide recession into a worldwide depression. Well, we're not in a worldwide recession now, but going off the cliff.
Okay, so right there, you did hear that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, he was talking about 2011 with Obama. Okay? That was 2011 with the bonds. So we know that that can happen again. Okay? That can happen again. The rating of the bonds can go down. Okay, now, let me take us back to our mutual scene here. Okay. The question is, what can be done, or what can Biden do? Because let's make no doubt about this, no mistake about this, and I will verify this through Krugman later, is that what the Republicans really want is they want to bargain, because they know that Obama gave in on various things in 2011, and here's where they want to go. And this is for the progressives that are out there, and I consider myself progressive, liberal. The Republican Party wants to knock out everything that Biden did during his reconciliation to get past his bill with climate. They want to go back on everything on climate. Okay, they want to go back to the fossil fuels. They don't want to do anything involved with climate change. Like, for example, Biden wanted to have the electric chargers for the EV automobiles, investments in wind power, solar power, all those types of things. They want to knock that out. Okay, that's their bargaining chip. And it looks like this time Biden's not going to go for it. Okay, so the question is, what can Biden do? Now, I'm going to defer to my notes here, but I think it's kind of important here. The first thing that the Democrats can do is do what's called a discharge petition. Okay, so basically that means this is done through Congress. Is that there is a way, there's a legal loophole, a way to get around having a vote with the Speaker of the House, getting around McCarthy. Okay, but you have to have a petition to do it. And the reasoning behind this petition is that there are probably 5 to 8 Republican congressmen and congresswomen who are in, swing districts, and they're reasonable, and they don't want to see the economy crash, and they would, if they had a straight up and down vote, if there were a real vote of just for or against, they would certainly probably vote with the Democrats. But they're afraid. They are absolutely afraid. So in the way to get to this discharge petition is you have to have a vote to get to the discharge petition, which means they have to expose themselves as going for the discharge petition. So they're probably, we can't say they won't, but those 5 to 8 Republicans probably won't do that. But that's the first course that Biden would want to try before we even discuss the 14th Amendment, because that'll come up. So a discharge petition. And again, that's up to 5 to 8 Republicans, but I don't know that I would trust them. What do you say about that?
Well, yeah, it isn't going to change. We could do the show for 400 years and it was not going to change. The Republicans are more concerned about the MAGA portion of their constituency than they are about anything else. So you're right. I'm sure there are many, and I'll even use the word many, reasonable Republicans who, given another set of circumstances, would support the petition that you said. Right now, it could be the kiss of death. A couple ways. It's just not the direction that it's in. The party is in, and so they're going to have to choose. If they choose to be reelected, they have to cater to the most conservative, and I'm not going to use the word conservative, the most radical elements of the Republican Party. It would be interesting to know, Brian, and of course we couldn't statistically know this. I mean, you could know who voted in Trump's election, who didn't vote before for Trump, but it would be interesting to know how many of the people that are now at the bottom of the Republican Party, but a growing number and certainly more influential than they should be, how many of them were brought in by Trump? How many of them were brought in after the January 6th insurrection? It seems to be the number is growing. What I do find interesting, again, with the Republicans is they are going to vote not only against the best interests of America, but their own best interests of what the majority of the states say. Again, one of the problems with the House is that a House member only represents a sliver of a state.
Right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think, I would say Marjorie Taylor Greene could not win a statewide race in Georgia. She could not. Lauren Boebert could not win a statewide race in Kansas. Boebert would probably have a better shot in Kansas than Greene would in Georgia because you've got Atlanta controlling so many votes, right?
Right.
But again, obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene speaks for enough of her constituents, just as Gosar does, just as Gates does, just as the whole list of people that go on do. So no, I don't think the petition I don't think is a realistic option. I think it's there, but I don't see the Republicans, as you said it best. They have to reveal themselves. They have to identify themselves.
Right. Now,
and they don't want to do that. The non-spokesman. I mean, the people that are out front. The Senate, Cruz, Hawley. I mean, they expose themselves. Very few quiet senators, but in the House, it's a little bit different. So I don't see it as a realistic. It's there, but I don't see it happening.
Now, before I get to the next one, there is a side note to that the Republicans, there are, like I said, there's that group of MAGA Republicans. We're talking, Boebert and Greene and
right.
and the schmuck from Florida, who's the guy who looks like Beavis or Butthead, Matt Gaetz. They're willing to let this thing go down and crash, but they don't want to have their fingerprints on it. And people like them, like the Jeff Van Drews, I think they're willing to let it crash because that's what Trump wants. He wants the crash, but they don't want to have their fingerprints on it because, they don't have any chance that somehow it will be tied to them. They're going to push the narrative that it's the Democrats that are doing it. So there is something there. But again, this goes back to the original theme, is that there are people who want to see our economy crash. They want to see it crash because the only way that they can succeed if democracy itself fails. This is not, I don't even want to call it politics. It is political terrorism. It's kind of like a gun to one's head, but it's not a real gun, but it leads to the same thing, the death of democracy. Is you mentioned when we were talking about Steve Schmidt with the snuff film. It's kind of like a snuff politics. They want this thing to die. Now, Veg did mention Bernie Sanders with the 14th Amendment. That's where we go next. Now, essentially with the 14th Amendment, as I understand it, it would be considered unconstitutional not to pay your bills. Okay? So in other words, having a debt ceiling itself is unconstitutional because it's saying, we're not going to pay our bills here, and you have to pay your bills. So it'll be the duty of the president and actually Janet Yellen from the Federal Reserve to clearly state that this is unconstitutional. And I mean, Janet Yellen's got to come through. It can't just be the president. There's got to be somebody, from the Federal Reserve who gets involved, or if not all of the Federal Reserve chairman, from all the different districts. But that's essentially what it is, that you would say it's unconstitutional. I know your next question is, well, won't that lead to the Supreme Court? And that's true.
Of course it will. And that's one of the...
what happens when you get to Alito? I mean, what does that... Do they want to see it crash? I mean, they're not Gates and they're not Boebert, and they're not Green, but I don't know. You tell me, are there two of them there like that could push it over, or three of them?
First of all, the court is 6-3, correct? Six conservatives, 3 liberals. So you automatically have to subtract 2 votes from the Republican side.
Right.
And I've said it before, I'll say it again. John Roberts will only go so far because it's his court. Not his court to control.
But his name's stamped on it, right?
His name is stamped on it, just like the Berger court, the Warren court. That name goes down in history.
I'm sorry, Dave, what can I say? You're right, silly wonky. Yellen's the Secretary of Treasury. And Powell's the head of the Feds. So, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So,
always good.
But either way, they all have to come out. Only the big financial people have to come out.
And what happens, thank you, anybody who can correct any of us, because, certainly Brian and I can make mistakes. It is. So I don't have any faith in anything getting the Supreme Court falling under any kind of normal ruling. Now, my question would be, the deadline comes, Biden and others push the 14th Amendment, declare that's what they're going to go. Now, what would be interesting is, how does that work in terms of the time frame? In other words,
right? Does the Supreme Court lay on it for a while, or do they go forward?
And in that time frame, that would be the question. In other words, if you start defaulting, you're going to default. If that's the rule, no, we're going to default because we didn't resolve it. And then sometimes, how it's we'll continue doing what we're doing until we rule. And I don't know. Again, I don't know how that would be in the Supreme Court. I just wouldn't. Again, look, Clarence Thomas has indicated he has no moral responsibility, no ethic responsibility. Alito is out there. Gorsuch, wow. So I with the 14th Amendment, will they go there? Maybe. But the question becomes, it gets to the Supreme Court, and we don't know what the Supreme Court will do.
Now, there are other options, and we'll get to them. But first, let's go back to your original question, how it affects the normal person. Well, there are many disasters which can happen with this. And we talk about the Treasury bills, and people kind of have this vague idea about Treasury bills, that they're kind of like bonds, but they're the $100,000 Treasury bills. They're big money. But we're going to put this on and listen to Krugman, because the Treasury bills, believe it or not, are used a lot behind the scenes privately, because they're used as collateral to make sure people pay up. And if that collateral isn't worth anything, well, not worth it, if its rating goes down, then you can't use that. And so that's used a lot. So let's check this out. I may not get the exact number here, but you'll hear it about the collateral here. We're going to go to the web, and here we go.
His promise to pay, you require collateral. And the ultimate collateral, the safest thing in the world, is a 3-month U.S. Treasury bill. And that's what people do. It's Treasury bills are so critical as collateral that once in a while we get times when interest rates on them go negative because there's a shortage and people are bidding to have them, and they're better than cash. If you suddenly say, okay, the safe asset which underpins every transaction practically that goes on, not quite, but underpins a lot of what goes on in the world economy, the world financial system, the safe asset is actually now a dubious IOU that may or may not be honored.
Okay, there you go. Let's go back to the main screen, Dave. So, as I said, you've got something that's used, all the time as a financial instrument as collateral. It's a AAA rating, and he said it's actually better than cash. Okay, because it's always been there. It holds its value. It's a 3-month thing. It doesn't last really, really long. But if you have a $100,000 Treasury bill or whatever you're going to have, these things act as collateral. And then now the rating goes down, and then it's all for shit. And then again, it's not just the United States it affects, because other countries and other private companies, things like that, they're going to use that as collateral. So they're willing to, if you think about it, they're willing to trash the entire system. Now, I guess the question is, are other Republicans willing to do it? And does Marjorie Taylor Greene understand what Krugman just said? Or is somebody feeding her this and saying, look, you may not understand this, but this is the way we can make this thing crash? I mean, that she would actually know about this. There might be somebody else behind these. I don't know. But I'd like us to speculate on this.
Well, I'm going to say, of course, politics, especially now with us so divided, is what? It's not the art of compromise. It's the art of brinkmanship. How far are you willing to go? Using a Cold War analogy, we push. Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, in retrospect, they said we were literally just minutes away from nuclear war. Minutes, not hours. And this is not nuclear war, but this is kind of economic war. Now, something I was thinking about, is this different, Brian, than a government shutdown? They had all this big thing about what impact would it have on the running of government if they don't pay their bills? Do functions cease? What is that tied into?
Well, I know that. Well, I know this for a fact. Some government employees will not be paid or can't be paid. Okay, so that automatically suggests that there would be shutdown in place. Now, I'm sure, like just for example, with teachers, teachers legally cannot strike in the state of New Jersey. I mean, you're not supposed to be able to do it. So they're considered essential. So I'm guessing certain things would be essential, like the military. I mean, that has to go through. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to state it, but I do know this, is that the money's not going to be... The bill, again, the bill is already there, Dave. The bill is already there, and it has been paid. And I don't know where that's going to come from. It could come in terms of certain types of disability payments. Jobs could be lost. And a lot of people work for the government. And it's probably the guy at the bottom that's going to be hit the most. Again, I don't know everybody who's going to be affected, but it seems kind of simple that if you don't have this pot of cash that you normally have, that people are going to be losers, and that's going to happen. That's going to happen. I want to take us up a little bit further, where he talked about Obama being bullied, and it's very short, but I think I'll probably just leave this on because it's going to be up in about 20 seconds. So we'll go back to the web.
Then all hell breaks loose. It could easily be worse than the 2008 financial crisis. This is something that you really are not supposed to mess around with, which is, of course, what's on the line right now.
And they did this in 2011. I was there when they did that.
But in 2011, Obama allowed himself to be bullied, to basically say, well, okay.
Right, we agreed. He agreed to the sequesters and cuts in a lot of stuff. And Biden has said, I won't negotiate that stuff. But how does he do that other than with the number of ways you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right. One way or another, he has to, I think, has to be prepared to do an end run around.
All right, so Dave, we can see that this is really going to be up to Biden. And again, I'm asking you, we don't know where he's going to go with this, but I'm going to ask you to speculate the type of person that Biden is and the experience he had with what happened with Obama. Will he go all the way?
Okay. I don't know Joe Biden personally, all right? But certainly living in New Jersey for the first 59 years of my life, and his two constituent states were Pennsylvania, where he was born, and Delaware. Been paying attention to him, and he's somewhat prominent. And Biden has always prided himself as being a good compromiser, crossing aisles. That was his strength. So I'm sure he's going to try to maybe exert even more effort in trying to get some kind of joint agreement. I don't see that happening. The reason I don't see it happening is the Republicans are not going to move because they're going to take, and it's not a risk, they're just going to say whatever happens, it's on Joe Biden, right? Which is kind of interesting because Joe Biden wants to solve it. The Republicans don't let Joe Biden solve it, right? Mm-hmm. And then put the blame on Joe Biden.
Right.
They're very good at that.
Right.
So, I how it plays out, I have no idea. I think what I want to talk about tonight is, dozens of other things that are going on, not to shortchange this.
Right.
But I'm just saying this is something that I think really honestly, and I put myself in this category, it's a little bit above most of our pay grades to understand this. Mm-hmm. And so but I think when you start hearing experts like Paul Krugman, or a person who's been there like Al Franken as senator, and I keep thinking, what a tragedy that is. Right. That he resigned when Donald Trump. Right. The list goes on. Right. But that's for another time. I think Franken actually, he's done his political tour, and he was a comedian before, and he's doing fine. And he may be more effective in certain ways, being a voice out there because there's so few liberal. I
don't know. I would love to see him back in the Senate, to be honest with you.
Well, of course. But I mean, I don't know at this point, cliche, here it comes. That ship may have sailed. Right. New people have filled the vacuum.
There are some things I do want to finish up with this, Dave. Some exotic, as they said, ways to solve this. Now, in a certain sense, Biden really does control this, given these exotic ways. He's okay in the end. So, first of all, the premise is this, that the Republicans in general, they don't care about debt, even though they're talking about that they care about it. Their past, their character has shown, like a credit report, their history has shown that they have never cared about debt. They don't care about it now. They didn't care about it then. This is a game of chicken. This is an absolute game of chicken. And it's really in these MAGA Republicans who are trying to bring down literally, not just embarrass. Again, I'm not saying they're just trying to embarrass Biden. I'm saying this is the fuse to undo democracy. And forget about climate change after this. Okay. We're going to go back to the web just to reiterate the idea that these are just debts that are in the past. This is not something in the future. And I think a lot of Americans don't understand that. I mean, the average American, and like you said, it's above people's pay grade. But let's check it out.
The spending already took place. The legislation that told the Treasury Department what tax rates to levy, what to spend money on, that was all passed by the normal legislative process. And so now it's only a question of, well, okay, are we going to allow Treasury to raise the money to pay for the things we've already told it to do?
Okay, so we're good with that, Dave, right? It's just basically...
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but right now, it's not being done, okay?
Right.
If it could be done easily, it would be done now. So whatever solution comes up is not going to necessarily be an easy one.
No,
I don't think Biden. Again, I don't think Biden wants to extend it. He wants to solve it yesterday, not because necessarily he's a great guy, right? But he realizes it's going to fall to the president. Is going to take the blame.
Well, I personally don't think that he wants to settle with the Republicans because I think
I didn't say that. He wants to have it resolved.
And I think he can. It is going to be weird though. The
Republicans don't have anything to lose. They're no rush. So I didn't want you.
Right. I get that.
Maybe I wasn't clear. I'm not saying Biden will do anything in compromise. What I'm saying is he has a vested interest, even if he didn't, as the president of the United States, of getting this thing off the front pages of newspapers and get us back to where we should be. The Republican Party doesn't have that same pressure.
Now, there's an ingenious solution to this too. Okay, and it's going to sound weird, Dave, but bear with me. So what Krugman was saying they have these commemorative coins that are created by the Treasury Department. Okay, the Fed doesn't actually print money, but the Treasury Department they can create commemorative coins. So they're saying they can create this platinum coin. Now there's something like $31 trillion of debt, but they can literally create a platinum coin and make it $1 trillion coin. And you could make more than one of them. And then you could deliver it to the Federal Reserve, that coin, just literally that commemorative coin. Now, as they joked around, they say the Republicans would want to have Lindbergh's face on it or whomever, that's, some kind of neo-fascist. But that $1 trillion coin could be considered an asset, and then you can borrow off that asset. And therefore, if you're short $1 trillion or 31 trillion, this way you've got this coin. So it's sneaky, but it's, after all the Republicans doing this crap, why not? Why not do it?
You used a pronoun there. They can create. Who's the they, Brian? Who would create that?
The Treasury Department, I believe.
As
far as the Bureau of, I'm trying to think who makes the Mint makes the coins, and the Bureau of Currency actually prints the money. The money doesn't become legal money until it gets to the Federal Reserve and it gets a number on it.
But there has to be some body or bodies who
the Federal Reserve.
Tonight. Okay, so
the Federal Reserve, and then none of that. The Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve would keep the money. It's on their account. See, they like a T account. We've got this asset here, and you can borrow off that asset, just like they would do. And that's the other thing, that the last thing they could do is they could keep, buying and selling, assets, as they've normally been doing anyway, the Federal Reserve, because they are constantly buying and selling securities, meaning bonds, mainly bonds, and they could do it themselves and sell these and then just put it, in the accounts at the Federal Reserve. So again, it's a circuitous way of doing it. Let me put on Krugman, because I think he explains it a hell of a lot better than I can, but it's worth it. Okay, let me go to the web, and here we go. Okay.
And otherwise, we're talking about extra legislative stuff, and we're talking about legal end run by invoking the 14th Amendment, or we're talking about fun stuff like platinum coins and premium bonds, which no one in the Biden administration will talk about them, but we know that those are also on the table.
I'm sorry, which the platinum coins, the $1 trillion coin?
The platinum coin is one, yeah. So again, I'm not sure how many listeners know this, but there's a piece of legislation that was enacted, I don't know when, but it says that the Treasury Department may issue
2 times faster hydration for your
They can
Liquid IV, real hydrating.
That's your fault, Dave.
New shoes.
No, it's your fault because
I can't help capitalism. It always screws me up.
platinum commemorative coins in any denomination it chooses. And that's all it says. And there's, it was clearly intended to have coins that celebrate the Charles Lindbergh or something like that. But that's not what the language says. And so you can mint a coin that says on it $1 trillion, and it's a $1 trillion coin.
So the compromise here could be the $1 trillion coin, but the very, very hard right-wing anti-Semitic Republicans say it has to be the Lindbergh coin.
That's right. Or maybe something, we could mint a coin with Vladimir Putin's face on it, whatever. And but it says $1 trillion. And then you very carefully carry the coin over to the Federal Reserve and deposit it at the U.S. government.
Gus, do not lose this coin.
That's right.
Don't get a latte or a ice cream cone.
All right, so let me go back.
No offense. I found that interesting, though. I didn't hear, as smart as I didn't hear Krugman say exactly who orders that coin.
Well, he said the Mint, the United States Mint makes Mint. I guess the Treasury
makes. There's a big difference between
okay. Well, who deals with money? Would be the Department of Treasury.
So the Secretary of the Treasury authorizes it.
I'm going to guess you're correct, Janet Yellen.
No, I'm not asking. I'm just saying it's interesting because I think sometimes that speaks to me of that's a little bit too simplistic. Not the solution, but the fact that just voila, some person without oversight anywhere. But yet it happens, right? There's no oversight over the Supreme Court. So certainly there's aspects of government where there's no oversight over it. That would just be interesting because
Well,
that would
there is. Even the Federal Reserve has some oversight because they are oversight over the banks, but they too have some oversight.
No, but I mean, could it be the chairman of the Fed? Could it be?
Well, I would assume. Look, I'm going to assume it's the Treasury Department. Okay,
all right,
the Treasury Department. Okay, and then the Mint does the metal coinage, so that's where they're going to do that.
Well, but what's interesting about that, Brian, too, is who controls the Treasury Department?
Janet Yellen.
Okay, and who controls Janet Yellen?
I do.
No,
you do. No, I mean, you might say it's part of the Biden administration, but he only probably he can only hire and fire her, but she still does the job. I mean, she might, behind the scenes.
What I'm saying is, Biden. It seems to me that Biden would have to support doing that for it to become a reality. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think they're discussing it behind the scenes. I'm sure he talks with the Department of Treasury.
I'm just saying, and Biden may want to put some distance, whatever. But
right. Well, maybe not. Maybe you can threaten him and say, look, or just kind of like leak it out there, like they said, like a general leak.
Right.
Like these are options that are out there. So you want to go your route and you want to crash the whole economy. I'll make the goddamn coin. I'll put Obama's face on it, and then now you really won't like it.
Right. I think,
or Michelle Obama, and they'll doubly not like it, and I'll like it. So they'll be pissed off. The more you get pissed them off, the better to me.
Well, what I want to do is, if do you have anything else you want to say on the?
No. I have covered all that I think we need to cover on that. It was important, and Bella says Command plus P, Janet Yellen.
Okay.
All right. So. I mean, it's an assumption, but I don't know who else would. The Supreme Court doesn't decide.
No. I mean, I agree. I mean, but I'm just saying there has to be. In other words, okay.
The Justice Department handles the justice criminal shit, and
right? But there has to be. It's like in the FBI director, for example, in the FBI, can order or close an investigation. Now, so can his investigators. But I just would be interested to know. Okay, President, Command, President. Janet Yellen. There you are. Okay. Make sure to keep that coin far away from crime of the century if he stole it and held the coin hostage. It would be a hell of a movie though if he did that. Could be starring somebody. But let's bring it down to Donald Trump. We need to get Trump in here. Brian, how the hell can we? How can you go for 47 minutes and not mention Donald
47
Trump?
Minutes?
How did you?
That's amazing because he's usually on my mind. I don't want him to be on my mind. It's just he has infiltrated my brain the last 6 years or 7 years.
And Donald Trump is in another battle now. And guess who his opponent is this time? None other than the Village People.
Oh, really? For using music?
Yep, we know the Village People for two songs. YMCA, which is rivaling. It would rival one of the biggest wedding songs now of all time, dance songs, get out there, comes out of nowhere. And of course, Macho Man and the Village People, with the exception of the lead singer. People don't realize the original Village People were all gay men, with the exception of the lead singer, who was, brought in. And he was, you can't even spell, so cut it out, right? So what's going on with this? Well,
oh, shit, sorry.
All politicians, when they're running or campaigning, they play music. I've attended a number of political rallies, and sometimes they get its theme songs, and sometimes it goes together. Like Bill Clinton will forever be identified with "Don't Stop" by Fleetwood Mac, right? They played it. Obama will be forever identified with "At Last" when he danced with Michelle, the great Etta James song. So what's going on here? Well, Trump has been known to play whatever he wants, whenever he wants, right? And I kind of find it ironic that Trump, who represents the MAGA, who represent the anti-gay movement, correct?
Right.
Chooses the songs he chooses. Now, when I only went to one Trump rally in Atlanta before the election, and he played two songs by Elton John, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird, just in terms of the choice. Now, again, probably his listeners, maybe they're not listening, maybe it's just background music, I don't know. But now the Village People have come out and said, stop and desist, because what they did, they took it a step further. He put together a campaign video at Mar-a-Lago, and he was there in it. And then behind him, they played the music of Macho Man, the Village People, but they had characters dressed up as the Village People behind him. And so what they're claiming is, even though you may have the right to use the music, you don't have the right to use the image. So it'll be interesting. Will Trump stop it? Or will he push the envelope, as he's known to do, and say, I'm more powerful than a bunch of, than 6 pseudo musicians out of New York? But I think that plays out well. As a musician, I've always been fascinated with how do politicians get away with this? And this is how they do. If you go to a big place like, let's pick Atlantic City Convention Hall, okay? It could be any big place. In the Navy, there you are. That's off the other.
Joey used to dance that in dance class. Isn't that right, Joey?
Probably, knowing Joey. Anyway, what happens, Brian, is that we come along and there are 2 major licensing organizations for those of you who aren't involved in music. One is BMI and the other is ASCAP, and they're obviously they're acronyms for something, but they're the 2. And you pay money, and then they pay royalties, and that's how you get moving. And venues can get that. Mm-hmm. Venues can actually have that. So if you are a political candidate in a specific venue or bar or any place that has a BMI or ASCAP license, and the artist that you're playing is because they're usually not both, they're either BMI or ASCAP, depending on which one they choose, you can play that music. Now, still, obviously, groups don't want to be associated with certain people. Now, Ted Nugent, he would love to have. Kid Rock, love to play every Trump. I mean, they're Trumpers. Travis Tritt, a lot of country people.
Who's that Greenwood guy? That song I hate. Whatever I'm not into the country. I have never heard such a shit song. I'm sorry if you like his shit. Lee Greenwood is his name or something?
Lee Greenwood.
My God damn.
And of course, while we're talking about culture, traditionally, all right, country music has been right-wing and conservative, correct? And rock music has been liberal and radical. Right.
Until Kid Rock and asshole.
And now, even like everything else, you're seeing more divisions there. But anyway, I thought it was interesting. So I'm going to kind of follow that story because, it's 2 New York powers, right? The power of Village People disco versus Donald Trump. So it really comes out of New York. And that's where I think that's where it's headed today for people. We really are in a culture war. There's no question. It affects the debt ceiling and all this political stuff comes out of Washington. But it's really starting to hit home, especially in Republican states. So I want to talk about 2 specific teachers who are in some trouble. And guess what state they come from? Well, they certainly don't come from New York or New Jersey or liberal state. So the first is from Florida.
Yeah, I was just saying it had to be a red state.
It's a red state. And what she did, and I'm not familiar with this movie, so maybe somebody out there is. It's a relatively new movie. It actually has Jake Gyllenhaal and Gabriel Union, among others, voicing it. So I assume it's animation if they say voicing it. And it's called Strange World. And basically, it's a film dedicated to the environment and the ecosystem from, I assume, a standpoint of we need to protect the environment. And yeah, we'll be at Rudy in a minute. And the ecosystem and the environment. So her name, just for the sake of this, her name is Jenna Barbie, I believe. And she teaches 5th grade in a school district in Florida. And so what she did, she showed this movie to the class. Right? And immediately, and Barbie herself said she chose the movie because it focuses on human relationship to the environment, because she had taught a section on the ecosystem, plants and animals. Now, Brian, you're a teacher, I'm a teacher. I could give the greatest lecture in the world. and it probably wouldn't have the same impact as a visual movie, video, whatever, because it incorporates more of our senses. It's just very simple, and it gets people more, especially young people who grew up with that. So it would be a very effective tool. So she shows this movie, and automatically there was a complaint, and automatically the district, Hernando County School District, sends out an email saying, "Oh, we're sorry. The movie will not be shown." Now, of course, she may be in some trouble because, as you know, most school districts, and if you don't know this, people, it's true. Most school districts have a policy on movies, what you can show.
They do now, that's for sure.
Well, and some of them are very specific, and I can understand that. When I represented teachers for 20 years as a quasi-legal, I would take them until they really needed an attorney. There were some really weird choices of movies to be shown, movies back in the day had the reputation of just show them and don't learn. I would suggest to any teachers out there, if any of you are grandparents or parents of teachers, suggest to them that they never show the whole movie. Don't do that. Pick a section. Now, of course, in this movie, if you'd picked a section where these two males express a desire, or a love for one another, you'd still be in trouble. But that will be playing out. And of course, at the top of that is, excuse me, is the man who is going to declare this Wednesday for president, the worst kept secret in America, Ron DeSantis. He will declare officially Wednesday for president. And he is leading the anti-woke, the anti-gay, and they do it in increments. So this anti-gay, supposedly pro-gay movie, which really it was a minor part of the movie, has now gotten the state where you have the teachers union on one side and parents on the other, and but that's not the worst one, I don't think. Now, this took place, excuse me.
We're both coughing tonight.
Yeah, I know. With a teacher in Illinois.
Joey's fault.
Now, Illinois, we don't hear that all the time as a conservative state, right? Because of Chicago.
Indiana, you think, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Illinois.
But no, you're right. Illinois is still farm air.
So this teacher by the name of Sarah Bonner, she'd been a middle school teacher for 20 years. And what she did, she would hold what she called book tastings on Monday. And so she would bring in a selection of books and maybe read from one of them or show them around with the idea of encouraging students to read books. Now, this is a personal belief of mine. I do not believe that students should be required to read or only required to read required books. Personal choice enters into it. And she was kind of following that. The idea is to get students to read. So one of the books that she introduced in this one class, a book tasting, was This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson, which the only reason I know about, I did look at it to see, it is one of the most banned books right now at the forefront. And basically what it does, it's a nonfiction book. It's the publisher calls it an informative, let me get the exact quote here. It's billed as an entertaining, informative instruction manual for anyone coming out as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans. So the purpose of the book, if you read it, is for someone who's wondering about that, right? And that's got to be a hard transition, I would think. If you decide to come out of the mainstream, maybe some, I know the students that I dealt with who were having that. It was a struggle for them. So this book is kind of for them, but it's also at the same time to dispel myths that are out there, for those students who aren't. Well, what happened there, the parent took it even further. They went to the police department and filed charges against her. Right? So now that's going to be fought out in the court of law about, did she commit a crime? And the Illinois law is a little unclear about that. It's not quite as cut and dried as the Florida law. But what happened was, Brian, is after 20 years, she quit. Flat out quit. Now, we know, or you and I know, and everyone else should know, education is, you can talk all you want about the friggin' debt ceiling, but education is in a huge crisis. It's very simply, they can't get teachers.
Right.
They can't.
Not a doubt.
All over the country, whether it's a small district, relatively small district like Bridgeton, or a relatively large district like Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is literally taking people off the street almost. If they're
I think they take substitutes with 30 credits, which means they could be 19 years old, going to a community college, and be teaching with the same kids that they went to school with, or in the same class the year before.
Correct. And of course, that's always been true of substitute teachers. But now they can't get substitutes, and those subs they do get become classroom teachers. Now, you subbed. Most teachers at some point in their career, I subbed. It's a tough, it's tough enough.
Yeah, I had to deal with Joey Fulcher for about 6 years.
Right. Well, that alone, you survived. But
barely.
Now, again, it gets to intent. What was the intent of these two teachers? I think, as far as I'm concerned, at least from what I've read and what I've researched, their intent was to supplement or add to their students' education. Isn't that what a teacher is supposed to do?
Right.
Again, maybe I would have advised the teacher who did the film, because sometimes film, again, makes more of an emphasis or more of an impact, I should say emphasis, impact in the community. Maybe she should have tried to get that film on an approved list first.
Right.
Because, that's, sort of, but now.
But even so, I'm just saying, had she, well, first of all, I don't know that it would have been approved, but I see what you're saying. Absolutely. She's got to, this is just the nature of education today. It's litigious. But even so, something like that would have been fair game, even if he had showed 10 minutes of it. In the state of Florida, you can forget about it.
Well, and what's kind of, I saw somebody, I think, put up the word insidious earlier or whatever. What is insidious is the Florida gay don't say gay law. Well, it started, I would still dispute it, but I could understand some rationale behind it. It started where you could not talk about issues of gay issues in grades kindergarten through third. All right. Now, that's a sensitive area. I kind of got that. I could compromise that out, right? But now it's been expanded to include every grade, and that's what happens. See, once it's sort of like once you open that door, and Ron DeSantis is going to use that. So now you have to look at Florida, ladies and gentlemen, especially after Thursday. You should be doing it now. As do you want to live in an America that replicates Florida? Now, the other thing that's going on with DeSantis, of course, is his war with Disney.
Oh, yes, indeed.
And that's going to be interesting. Disney has now fired they're going back and forth. DeSantis, actually, what happened was Disney came out first. Disney a year ago came out against the anti-gay sentiments of DeSantis and the Republican Party in Florida. Now, they obviously had their vested interest in doing it too. They weren't their corporation. They make a hell of a lot of money, but I think they kind of are pushing diversity, right? I do think they're doing that in their films, and not because they're such great people necessarily, but you can't have all white characters like Walt did. It's not going to fly. Right. You're going to deal with some of those issues. So first of all, they come out and DeSantis, like a petulant child, says, "Okay, you want to do that? I'm going to come to you." And he took away their sovereignty. Basically, in Orlando, Disney controlled that area. Their own fire department, their own police force, pretty much their own regulations. Now, they're not going to go against anything that harms people, right? They're not, because they have to get people into their land to see these things. So DeSantis said, "Okay, I'm going to take that away from you." And he did. And now the next shot came last week when Disney said they're pulling out of $1 billion project in Orlando. Now the question becomes, why did Ron DeSantis do that? Is that Ron DeSantis running for president, and he'll do something different when he gets there? If he gets to be president, I don't think so. So what I want to urge our viewers to do, and they're pretty alert, but tell others to watch Florida, especially after Thursday, because that would give you a preview of, I think, the America that Ron DeSantis would push for. And certainly as Illinois, we look at these other states now, interesting enough, he's got a foil now out there. And that man also has his eye on the presidency. And that foil is also Disney involved, which I find interesting. And that's the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. And they're kind of, so maybe it'll be Gavin. And Gavin Newsom said, great, send us. We take more Disney people. We'll take that. Right. And of course, a liberal state. But, and then saving another one of your favorite. I know that you have sexual fantasies about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I know that you do. You've denied it in the past, but it's true. She is somebody that you desire. And I assume you're actually right now texting her.
No, it's Joey Folger's texting me, and I got to stop him. I'll just tell him, Joey, call Kaz.
Okay, here we go. So what's up with Miss Taylor Greene? Do you know what she did? Do you know what your girl did this week?
Well, geez, I could only guess. I don't know. She hung out at the gym and found two more people to have to entertain. I don't know.
Well, she actually introduced 3 articles of impeachment on President Biden.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I heard something about that, but I didn't pay attention, of course.
Well, because now, what is the focus there? The focus is the border. All right. Because she is basically accusing him of endangering his power by widely opening the border, by deliberately allowing people with COVID to come into this country and spread out. And the third is again related to that. Now, this is the first time that impeachment articles have been levied against Biden with the Republicans in control of Congress. During his first 2 years when the Democrats controlled, there were two motions, and it didn't go anywhere. I missed this. Well, Hemingway wrote several good novels. There must have been something before that because I must have missed the Hemingway thing while I'm talking. But anyway, back to Miss Greene and this. Now, impeachment's a funny thing, Brian. It really is. How many presidents does it test? And again, I don't put you on personally. You're the everyman here. How many presidents have been impeached in the United States history?
Well, I know Clinton and I know Trump twice.
You're missing one.
Andrew Jackson. Was it Andrew
the
Jackson?
other guy. The other Andrew.
Andrew Johnson.
Right. Now,
Okay.
Johnson, of course, was because of his handling of the war. Johnson, most historians believe that Lincoln took Johnson as a compromise, and Johnson was soft on the South, right? And so he got caught up in the aftermath of the victors in the war and that kind of thing. And he also had a couple, I think he basically had some other personal problems that went on to it. But of the impeachments, so there's been 3 presidents with 4 impeachments. Trump, as you mentioned, having 2. Impeachments are easy to get, right? Action on impeachments are hard to do.
Right, and that was the problem.
Because again, it always bears, I think something important is the House, you hear and they file the charges and they hear the charges and they pass, they impeach, but then the Senate is like the court where it would impose the Senate sentence. And because of the high level of votes that you need in the Senate, a majority would have to have quite a bit of, especially as closely divided as the Senate is, one party or the other couldn't file sway. But of course, ask Marjorie Taylor Greene doing this at the border is just another indication of her personal politics, which I really question anybody in her district who voted for her. I'd love to get them all together and talk to them and say, what the hell is wrong with you, right? But also, what the Republican Party is doing is taking the Boeberts and the Greens and the Gateses, and it's putting them out as frontmen to run. Now, I mentioned last show, and I think this is interesting, and I haven't really seen it that much. The Senate has kind of been quiet, right? When have you heard? Now, Mitch McConnell did have an injury, right, that incapacitated him for a period of time. But when did you last heard of Josh Hawley? When have you last heard of Ted Gates? The only one that you hear of, and that's just because he's got to be the dumb. I said Ted Gates, Ted Cruz. Yeah. The only one that you've heard about, and he's got to be the dumbest senator. He's got to be Tommy Tuberville from Alabama.
Oh my God! That son of a bitch.
Anybody dumb?
Oh my God!
He said white nationalists in the Army should be praised as patriots. There you are, Tommy. That kind of tells you where you're coming from. Shade of Alabama, shame, shame, shame. But again, we talk about today, and I think that's something that I focus on. I focus on not politics necessarily so much as political now, because that is theater, but it's now so entwined in our culture, right? So how does a person like Tommy Tuberville get to run for Senate? And
how did he even get to be coach at Alabama? You think of all the African American players?
No, it was Auburn. Auburn.
Well, even Auburn. With all the African American players, like that guy.
That's a very good question. So, did he keep that under wraps?
Yeah, right? I would guess so. That's
or did African American players? Because at the time Tuberville was there, Auburn was a pretty good school. It's football wise, it's now fallen into disrepair. Alabama and Georgia are really the two poster children now for NCAA football. Do black players just say, I'm going to go to Auburn? They gave me a scholarship. I'll put up with it. I mean, we don't know, but we do know that Tommy Tuberville, based on that remark, is either insensitive, a racist, or stupid, or a combination of all three.
Right.
But I just said, I used him to contrast as if they're testing him out, the point. So here's the statistic back to Mr. DeSantis, though. Now, in a recent he nationally in this poll beat Joe Biden by 1 percentage point. And the reason I want to point that out is people, please, 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 if you do nothing else, disregard all the polls. Disregard all the polls. They're all over the place. Polls can't, there has to be, if there were an election tomorrow, right, Brian, and it were Trump and Biden or Biden and DeSantis, whatever, there'd be a winner, and that person would win by a certain number of points, correct? I mean, 1%, 2%, 4%. So there is out there, if you could have an accurate poll, there is a way maybe to predict the race. But at this point, I think polls have indicated they really, whether it's people not being, I've heard a number of theories. One is that people, a lot of conservatives who would vote for Trump do not want to be identified for that, so they don't say that, right?
Right. Yeah, because they might not be able to get a date either.
Well, you laugh, ladies and gentlemen. That's true. There's every 4 months there's a story about every 4 months about how difficult it is for young Republican males here specifically, to get to date in Washington D.C. And Anthony says go up and down like the Dow Jones. And that's part of the American, the American fascination with headlines or whatever. But it does worry me, which brings me to another thing in pop culture this week. Brian, do you know anything about the show on HBO called Succession? Do you know anything about that?
You've mentioned it about 5 or 6 times. I've seen just a few tidbits on HBO, but I haven't watched it.
Basically, it's a story. No, you don't need to watch it. Basically, it's a story of a completely dysfunctional, very wealthy family, New York based, and they have a fictional network called ATN. And so roughly based, using examples from Murdoch, art steals from life and life reflects art. and the show last Sunday, for anybody interested in politics, you don't have to watch anything else. I mean, you don't have to watch the whole show. That is a show I would recommend because it's eerie how much that reflects. Basically what happens is there's a very conservative candidate like a Trump, right? And in Minnesota, there's an incident where 100,000 ballots are burned, and it appears that his people took it over and burned it. Well, 100,000 ballots in Milwaukee, 90%, 95% Democratic. and there's pressure on the father has died in the story. Just says so. It's the first time his three children, who are all battling for power, have to step in and decide. And basically, this conservative right-wing president had said that he will stop a deal that was in the motion, that the one son wants stopped to keep ATN at the top of the polls. And so the idea is you call Wisconsin, right? You call Arizona, and that'll be it. And they go back and forth, but it's really interesting.
Is it as dark as Handmaid's Tale or not?
No, it's dark. Well, the thing is funny. You should mention that they keep calling it a comedy. I don't find it funny. I mean, I really there's a couple instances, where a character.
I never knew stealing votes is funny. Ballots.
Well, I think that's it. It was played, but it was played against. There is some good actors in the show. I mean, there really are, and this family, it becomes America's fascination. It goes.
You're saying it's HBO though, right? HBO. Well, that's got to be good.
It goes back to the idea of the soap operas, and then soap operas were on during the day, right? Back in the days when radio, then they moved to television. I remember my mother used to watch 3 of them in a row. That was on 11:30, 12, and 12:30. They were half hour. Dysfunctional families, this whole thing. But they were basically just normal dysfunctional families. And then after the 70s, when, and into the 80s, when, greed is good, we start getting the Dallases, with JR, and Dynasty. And Succession is just one of those kinds of things, but playing out now in a political realm. So just for anybody, I mean, I don't shill for the show. It has won Best TV Show a couple times. It'll probably win this year. I think it's overrated in general. But this one show, I think, is just interesting to look at if you're interested in politics and you're interested, as I am, in the effect of culture on politics. Then the last thing in culture that I want to talk about, I don't know if you've been following it, is your favorite social media, Brian. I know that you're on there all the time. TikTok.
Oh. Now,
Brian, would you consider yourself, you use social media, correct?
Absolutely.
All right.
Not as much as kids do. I mean,
I'm not asking that. I'm saying, but you use social media.
Absolutely.
Probably more than the average 60-year-old. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I don't use Facebook as much as people my age use, but when you're talking about all the media, I would say yes.
Yes, because you're YouTube. And, we talked a little bit last week about the history, but TikTok is the new game in town, right? And we go to another one of your favorite states, Montana. And Montana this week did something this past week.
Moving to Montana soon. Gonna be a dental floss tycoon. A mental floss.
Okay, Frank Zappa. But the idea is,
that's not good.
Montana. The question now, this is going to be a very interesting thing to follow. Why is this opposition to TikTok? Do you know why there's so much widespread opposition to TikTok?
Because of China?
Exactly. What the fear is that they will be able to gather unlimited data on Americans, right? To use for whatever nefarious purposes they want. But then on the other side, you have a concern that they will spread misinformation or disinformation. Now, you mentioned before Facebook. Is that TikTok?
No, that's YouTube. I was putting on YouTube to see if our broadcast was on. It just switched my earpods.
You know what? You are, pardon my English, but you are one fucked up person to do a show with.
It keeps people going. They got bored for a second. They
No, they don't. You don't need to demonstrate constantly your incompetence. We've got it. We've established it. All right. So back to our friends TikTok. Well, part of it is, of course, because it is a young thing, it's a little bit misunderstood. The history, for a quick history lesson on social media, correct me if you think I'm wrong. MySpace begets Facebook,
Right.
begets Instagram, begets Snapchat, begets TikTok, and there's something else looming out there now that we don't know about. But the question becomes, Brian, I'm going to put this to you. Do you think it would, if indeed it's true that China could get information from us or feed disinformation or misinformation for us, do you think a ban is appropriate? Montana's banned it.
I don't know, because I mean I know that the CEO of TikTok had promised, I mean, I would think there are enough safeguards that they could get around that, not get around that. Okay, depends on what are you getting from people. I mean, I would. Well, I don't.
Here's the problem: when we opened the Pandora's box of social media, right? And it's there. There are two basic ways to really get your social media supplied to you. One is over the internet, correct?
Correct.
And the other is by phone line, direct. You can control what goes out over the internet. You can't control what comes down on the phone, right? So you could what Montana's law would do, it's already the ACLU is constitutionally challenging it, but it would already, it's doomed to failure from that very thing. Now, interesting enough, I did not know this. The military, it's banned in the military, and government issued phones, it's illegal to have TikTok.
Right. Well, I would understand that. My
problem with that, and this is my problem, is now I'm all upset. I'm all upset about banning books. That's a personal thing. I don't think you ban any books. I think you use, they should be available. And if they're there now, obviously, we used our term last week, snuff film. If you get a snuff film book, we don't need that, right? I mean, there's always some. I like that. The cute cats are certainly on TikTok, no question about that. The problem becomes for me, and I hope for others, is if you allow banning, where does it stop? Who bans the banners, right? You talked about A Handmaid's Tale. There's certainly indications that there's certainly a large portion of the Republican Party that would love to have a theocracy, right?
Absolutely.
So,
because they see that as they have this nostalgic view of the past, unlike most of us who kind of understand about, as you said, that America never was great. And right. They see the demographics changing, and they can't accept. After Obama became president, they said, we're not going to go with this anymore. So we're going to do something about it. So, they couldn't care less about democracy anymore. They never wanted democracy. They just wanted control. And if they had democracy at the same time, that was fine.
And I think that control thing comes back into certainly into whether we're talking about TikTok, or we're talking about books, we're talking about libraries, we're talking about schools, we're talking about massive number of people, right, involved. And I liked what one teacher said, talking about the book. She said, I understand that a specific parent or parents might get upset with a book. But she said, I have to think of my whole class, right? And a parent only has to think of their child. So I think that's the danger. I think it's, for me, just the book banning alone is enough don't need much to say Ron DeSantis is unfit to be president in my mind. Montana, it's TikTok today, right? And even if you do see some, and silly, nice, but it ain't going to happen. Okay. It's just not, it's just not going to happen. It's like saying, I want to be 7 foot tall. I want to be 7'4", like that 19-year-old basketball player that they say is the greatest prospect
in France, right? Yeah, he's 7'5", and he runs the court like a guard.
And they said he can play the point, and they said he's an 8-foot wingspan. Well, there's as much chance of me, and so I'm not saying I approve of it. there's as much chance of me growing to be that person tomorrow as there is social media going. And look, Mr. Wonka, I mean, I spent 12 years of my life working for newspapers. Newspapers, small local newspapers are done. The reason is the advertising base is not there. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be brought back. They've tried a couple of things, admirable things. They are doing something at the national level that's pretty interesting with ProPublica and others that are outsource funded, doing investigations. But it's just we're moving. You know, that social media is where we are. It's where the kids are. My grandson, who goes to school, is a private school, but it's in Tuscaloosa,
And it's
Alabama.
pop culture too. It's like, how do you stop pop culture? It's so powerful.
And I was gonna say is sometimes it's almost you have to join it. They now have they have courses in gaming and social media, which I think is good, right? I mean, I think it is good. I mean, you can learn it. Ban nothing, let the words fly. Freedom is just that. Karen, that would be my belief. I would certainly say that. Now the question becomes, as a parent, I think you have a right. You have a say in what your children can read, right? I mean, don't read that book at home. Okay, if that's what you want to do, fine. Or I don't want that book in my house. Okay, risk losing your child. But as far as the government, no, not unless in some way it poses danger. Now, you do get into some really tricky areas. Should Donald Trump be on social media? I'm going to go and say yes. I'm going to say yes. Because, again, I don't, if you ban Donald Trump, what's to stop you tomorrow from banning Joe Biden, right? I mean, so, you know, let it fall where it may and hope that in the end, clear minds win. Maybe they don't. Maybe they never have. Another thing I did this week, talking about America, Brian, you brought it up. America's never been great. It was one of the best panels I've been to in a long time. Judy and I got invited to attend to go to Capitol Hill on what, I guess Thursday night it was? Thursday night. Wednesday night, I think. Anyway, to go up there and see a presentation on the Native American boarding schools. And that's something that was not in any history books. Do you know anything about that? Anything about, when I say Native American boarding schools, do you know anything about that at all, Brian?
Nothing, Dave.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think, now what's interesting is we talk about the power of pop culture. Another show up there with Succession right now is Yellowstone, which has Kevin Costner. Yeah. And Yellowstone is basically Succession set in Montana. I mean, they're very interesting. Two dysfunctional families, leader, you know, strong, dominant male leader, kind of thing. But one of the things that the show does very well, right now, he's one of the hottest writers and creators in Hollywood. Taylor, he has Yellowstone. He has two spinoffs on that, 1923 and 1888. He has another show, a couple other shows out there, Mayor of Kingston. That is, you know, he's like the hot person right now. But one of the things he does very well is he presents the Native American side of things, right? And one of the, it's so powerful in 1923. It is painful to watch. Basically, there's a storyline where it's a Catholic-run Native American school where they just pull the kids out and beat them, abuse them, kill them. In Canada, they're still finding grave sites from 1960 of indigenous people up there. So, you know, my point is, the talk was painful, but it was three actors from the show. And I wish everybody could kind of see that and then hear what they had to say. Because again, anybody who says America is great, they have to deal with a number of things. And four of the things they have to deal with is the treatment of indigenous people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Slavery,
Right.
Jim Crow laws,
Right.
and the Japanese internment during World War II. And that does not include the fact, I mean, it's kind of interesting, Brian, do you realize it was in the 20th century that women got the vote?
Right.
I mean, that's not a long time ago.
It's absurd. You know,
That's not a long
Einstein
time.
was already thinking about black holes, back before then, and or contemplating it at least.
No. And so whenever I hear that, I think of all the things the maggots say that bothers me is make America great again. And again, living in Washington, D.C., one of the things we get, and it's nice on one hand to see them back, school groups come here. Although Judy said the other day there were hundreds, literally hundreds of kids. There's a mall next to us, and they have a big food court, and the kids actually go there to eat, right? I mean, they can, it's good because they can go to Taco Bell and they go to McDonald's. And she said, and you watch them, she said, well, what do they get out of coming to Washington? And I said, well, at least it's something. Do you know what I mean? They're not there. They're there. They're mostly middle school kids, but it's something coming. But one of the things that really bothers me when I see this, and it's less now, much less now than it was when Trump was in office, they purchase whatever they see, right? I mean, that's what kids do. They want a souvenir of Washington. And one of the souvenirs, which the souvenir stands still have, is Make America Great merchandise. And I want to go up to the kids, but, they're kids. I just want to say, do you understand the message that you're sending with that? Do you have, and of course, they probably don't. Now, some do. I mean, some do. But, white Christian people doing it, not American, not Canadians. It's white Christian church-going people, which, of course, Mr. Wonka, lends itself to asking the question, how in the fuck can a church-going person be a Christian nationalist, be a Trumper? And the rationale is very simple. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They don't know how the fuck to read the Bible. And they're listening to a fucking preacher or some fucking person that is turning the idea of love is not the God that they're talking about. They're talking about a God of vengeance, right? An eye for an eye. And one of the things that I've always tried to point out to Christians, if they're going to do that, is, look, don't really get too wrapped up in the Old Testament, because the New Testament came along. And
they seem to be the ones that are more into the New Testament than the Jews. I mean, the Jews seem to be more like, at least American Jews, more like the New Testament type people. They're make sure the dog has air conditioning, and then on the other side, they're like, tie him to a tree and give him a bowl of food and let him sit out there for a week.
And another completely false idea that a lot of conservatives have is that we were founded as a Christian nation. That is not true. It is not true. We were not founded as a Christian nation. If anything,
right? But they're going to promote that narrative, and that's why it doesn't matter, because they believe that shit.
Well, that's ignorance, Brian. That's ignorance, and that gets back to book banning. Okay, if you ban everything that's critical of white heterosexual Christian America, well, what does that leave? That leaves a hell of a lot of people out, but it also voices that need to be heard. So I don't think there's any question. If you watch, again, I'm not shilling for Yellowstone, just like I wasn't shilling for Succession. But I would recommend, again, if you don't know anything about the Native American boarding schools, just watch the premiere episode of 1923, which is, a prequel to that. And I just honestly...
And what network is this on?
Let's see, that would be Paramount. Because Yellowstone is on Peacock now, 4 seasons. Okay. It's got another season coming out.
So this is called 1923 on Paramount.
Yep, and you don't have to watch the whole thing. Just watch the first show, and then if you want to watch it, I mean, first of all, it's got a pretty good cast. The 2 lead roles are Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. So I mean, it's not
right.
And I mean, they're both
it's an expensive cast.
Yeah, and I say Taylor Sheridan is the hot person right now as writer. I think he is. I think his reputation is justified from what he does. Now, of course, it's also mythical in the sense that there's probably more guns have been fired in 1923 just the show than were fired in the entire 1920s in Montana. But it's still the idea of, and I think again it's good to look at it while you can get angry at the Native American treatment of the Native Americans, and you also see how powerful they were. I was thinking about that, Brian, when I was sitting in that talk with the 3 actors, and they were talking about how they were raised and Native American culture. Think about if the Native Americans had fought off the colonists, right? Just say they had. Now that's hypothetical, and I understand all that. How much different would the place be? Well, it'd be you can't even envision it, right? And again, there's some myths there because yes, the Native Americans were very much more in tune with the land, but they could be very brutal and savage to their enemies too. So I mean, it wasn't. The difference is we just kept pushing, and we had no aversion to getting blankets with smallpox germs in them and giving them to the Native Americans. We had no compulsion with just massacring women and children or taking them from these homes. But I did think two movies, there's only been two shows that really have ever affected me like that. In 1969, movies or shows, I went to see Easy Rider with my
Right, yeah. I mean, that's...
And I came out of there, and all I wanted to do was find some rednecks and blow them away. That's all I wanted to do. That was
that was just, that scene was just so well done. And there were a lot of scenes that were. I've gone over that one scene where remember Dave when they were sitting in front of a campfire at night, and then Nicholson.
Oh, with Jack
about
Nicholson,
freedom,
and he talks about, and it's really a great. I mean, everybody again should look at that because he was, he kind of captured it, right?
Right.
Now, interesting enough, that was my simplistic look as a 17-year-old, right? Seeing it then. Now, if you see though, you have to question. They made their cocaine deal at the beginning. Captain Trips and Billy, or Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. So, that kind of taint them too. Maybe they weren't I sided with them because they were my people, young people, etc. But I remember that. And then the other thing is watching 1923, I just really wanted to go out and destroy the Catholic Church.
Mm.
Now, the Catholic Church was not the only church doing that, right? It was kind of in the forefront. And to see that, and to see obviously it was played that way, but to see how do you say this? The peaceful coexistence of nature that the Native Americans were pushing versus this idea of God, a God who thinks you're an infidel, who thinks you're a pagan, and we're going to beat it out of you. And literally they do. I mean, it's it's kind of brutal. So again, I worry that we're headed back in that direction. In other words, 1984 is fiction, right? Brave New World is fiction. A Handmaid's Tale is fiction. But there's some parts that are getting way too close, like Succession, fiction, but that certainly the election episode, which was last Sunday. And then of course you get to another question.
But by the way, I want to interject because we look at that type of scene, and I haven't seen it, but from what you've explained, it reminds me of Plot Against America. But those things happen in Eastern Europe all the time, and that's something we have to understand. Like with Belarus, Belarus, I should say.
Right.
You've got Lukashenko; he stole that election. You've got Putin stole. I mean, who knows what the actual vote would have been? But he didn't get 85% of the vote without dumping something.
And what I find interesting, in a sad sort of way, is look how many Republicans praise that kind of government, which is the antithesis of what American government should be.
Right.
I mean, American government has always been plagued with corruption, and of course, it's in a period of time. For example, it's hard for us in the modern age to really understand how people felt about slavery in the 1700s and in the 1800s. I mean, it really is. Let's be honest. Okay. Whether you're a Northerner or a Southerner, Karen, that's what I'm saying. It was fiction, but there's always elements of. In 1984, I always associated more with, like you said, Brian, Eastern Europe. Those kinds of fascists, and it was basically 1984. Do you know how he got the title?
No.
It was written in 1948. He just reversed the two numbers, and so what Orwell was so aware of is what fascism had done in Spain, Italy, and Germany. And that, of course, was foremost on his mind. But this idea of how does one and I want to return to something that was put up. How does one, I mean, seriously, this is a rhetorical question. How does one believe in their heart that they are a Christian and act the way that so many Christians do? Now, you and I kind of differ on this, Brian. I mean, I think you kind of just don't see the value in Christianity at all. I can see it if it's an individual decision not governed by the government of the church. I mean, I can understand that. If you were to take Jesus's words, which you can do in the King James Bible, get a red Bible, right, where Jesus' words are in red. I'm not saying Jesus is real. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm saying if you lived your life that way, I think you'd live a pretty good life in terms of both yourself and others. Definitely for others, right? But that's not what we get out of Christianity. We go back and pick and choose and cherry pick. And interesting, bring in more culture, which Donald Trump was involved with. Donald Trump was heavily involved for a while with pro wrestling, with Vince McMahon, right? Trump actually went on there. He's got his hair, he cut Vince McMahon's hair. I mean, Trump is just P.T. Barnum of right. Whatever. I think P.T. Barnum was cooler, but Trump's like that. But anyway, that also has elements of religion. There was a guy who died this week, and his name was Superstar Billy Graham.
Oh, I remember him.
Yeah, I remember, and he was really the forerunner of Hulk Hogan.
Hulk, right?
And he was also a forerunner of Jesse the Body Ventura. Now, Jesse the Body Ventura, he becomes governor of Minnesota, right? Which is, it was kind of interesting to watch him in that position and see him. But anyway, the Superstar Billy Graham actually was at first, and in his teenage years, he had a falling out with his family. He ended up with a traveling religious tent show. And he used a lot of that later. So, of course, that's part of the other thing, too. When you start getting into churches, they're also entertainment, right? A lot of times. And depending, again, it sounds like I'm just, if you want to watch a humorous take on that, HBO has coming up, it'll be its third season, starts in June, called The Righteous Gemstones. And it's got John Goodman. And it's basically this dysfunctional family, right, who's fighting over this huge church. It's a big Southern thing. Now, how do we get to Gregory Peck? Where I missed that. I was talking. Yeah, no, right before that, whatever. There was a comment, obviously, and that. But I mean, something had to bring that in. Okay, LPs in a bonfire, 1966. You were too little for that, right? Do you remember when? It came out of the Southern Church. And it was actually, if I remember correctly, it was Alabama. I think of course, so much was down there then. When John Lennon said, and misquoted indeed, but said we're greater and more powerful than Jesus. And actually, what he said was true. In England at that time, the church was just in disarray, and the Beatles probably were more popular than Jesus. With young people. I mean, but he didn't say it as he just made it as a statement and was saying a little bit out of context. But I remember seeing that they burned all the Beatles records that they could get a hold of in this couple of towns in Alabama. And again, that's the ultimate, because I don't see how you burn something and you don't come back to, the book burning and other things in Nazi Germany. And I grew up in a time, and again, I'm the first one to say times change. I don't think people change. I think times change. But it was just Nazi Germany was just bad, right? I mean, there was nothing good about Nazi Germany. We really focused more on that, I think, in schools than Japanese. Why? Probably because more Germans. I don't know. And now suddenly you begin to look at America, and there are people who are certainly voting and in some government that probably think what Nazi Germany did was pretty damn good. It controlled the Beatles. And that's what I was saying, Veg. They were, especially in England, if not here. And but again, you have to be so careful, right? If you take on religion, because people just feel very strongly about it. I don't mean you shouldn't. I'm just saying, I think most people are misinformed at best in terms of Christianity, no matter what church they go to, no matter what they profess to believe. And especially when you find people like Marcia Taylor Greene, like Lauren Boebert, like Matt Gaetz, evoking God at a Gosar, Cruz, Ted Cruz. I mean, here's an interesting one. You know why Ted Cruz ran for president? Do you know, Brian?
Why? Why
Yeah.
he ran for president?
Yeah.
Aside from the obvious, must be.
Well, here's what happened. Okay, I mean, I mean, he said this. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying he said it. He prayed over it, and he and his wife and some followers were in the church praying, and God spoke directly to his wife and said, "Your husband should run for president." Wow. If there is a God, I really don't think that God really wants to, unless that God was going for the full-time revelation apocalypse. I don't think that God would want Ted Cruz as president. But yet he can say that, and people accept it, right? He won, not the presidency, but he continues to win. And you said it before, Brian, even on tonight's show. Barack Obama was so hated for being black, and the Democratic Party is so aligned with minorities that there's a large group of white Americans who will do anything to keep those people out. Right. And that's what we're seeing. Whether it's a debt ceiling, wrecking it, wrecking America for that, whether it's losing $1 billion investment in Disney in Florida, whether it's taking a book that could really benefit a gay child and banning it, whether it's in Montana, like I said, banning TikTok. I mean, and I think sometimes it's futile, but I don't think they care, Brian. I don't think they care. I don't think, I mean, they want to win, but just getting it out, DeSantis is now viewed by some as this, you took on Disney, you took on the giant, you're the giant slayer. Fuck that. Disney could kick his ass every day of the week. All right. And it will be interesting because the field is growing with Republican candidates. And we shouldn't really have to be talking about this in 2023, but we are. The presidential race will kick off in earnest, Labor Day, right, of this year. And it's already in. I mean, we already know that. Let me ask you something, and I hope this doesn't happen. But we're talking hypotheticals here or advancement. And anybody else, please feel free, any of the audience listening tonight, or later, if you watch it later on YouTube, send an email in. If for some reason Joe Biden couldn't run, right, just couldn't, so for whatever reason that is, do you have a candidate that you favor in the Democratic Party? First one, I'll make it a two-part question. The first one is, do you have someone you favor? The second is, do you have someone maybe that you don't favor but could win? So we'll break it into two parts.
Well, if you're talking about somebody whom I could trust, intelligent, I would say Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island.
Okay. But
he's not a popular name. You might see Hakeem Jeffries as a name. Gavin Newsom, because his face is popular. But I would say I personally would like Sheldon Whitehouse as a president, but that I don't know that he would even come close to winning an election because he doesn't have the name recognition, So now I have to do that thing, like the Biden type of thing, like we've done before. We've had to discuss, well, look, yeah, maybe we like Bernie, but we know that Biden has the best chance of winning, and that's why you do it. So do you become pragmatic? But if you're asking me, I guess if you're asking me in terms of a real idealistic question, it would be
that you answer that. Now, a practical question. What Democrat do you think would have the best chance of winning, whether that person was going up against Trump or DeSantis, who isn't Joe Biden?
That's where the Democratic Party has a real problem. I mean, you could throw names like Ryan, you could throw Kamala Harris, you could throw Gavin Newsom. To be frank with you, Dave, I think nobody has emerged as a clear-cut candidate, and that's a problem for the Democratic Party. There's no Bobby Kennedy in the wings right now.
Right.
Where
and I
is
think
that?
I think you're exactly right. What I think would happen, I would assume, and this is where the timing is so crucial, that candidate, whomever it is, would have to emerge from the primaries, right? I don't think, I agree with you, Brian. I don't see that candidate right there now. And I think you have a particular problem because there's going to be a lot of support for Kamala Harris simply because she's the vice president. Now, again, I don't know Miss Harris. I do think I know a little bit about American politics, although sometimes I question myself at post-Trump. But I think she does bring two problems to the table. A woman, African American. I hope that my grandchildren, one of whom's 15, the other who's 14, will see an America where that doesn't come into play. But right now it does. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Could she surprise us? Could she?
Well,
like, the seventh draft choice turns out to be the best player, and
right,
actually does
the Tom Brady, right? Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that's my point. Myself included, I think a lot of people who I'm not a Democrat, I'm a liberal. There's a difference, but basically there isn't a difference anymore, right? Because basically it'd be impossible to find a liberal Republican. Well, that's true, but that Bobby Kennedy is as nut as Donald Trump. Trust me, I am not a fan of that Bobby Kennedy. We actually talked about it on a previous show. We'll probably have to deal with it again because right now he's one of 3 declared candidates for the Democratic side: Biden, Marianne Williamson, and Bobby Kennedy. And we have 2 really whack jobs out there. So I don't count them. Although Kennedy has a name factor, right? I mean, that's important. So while Democrats or liberals like you and I, Brian, and probably some out there, there is a whole primary process where I think there would be a best candidate, you know what I mean, would win a primary, in an open primary in the Democratic. And most of the names you mentioned, I think if it were open, Gavin Newsom would certainly throw his. There's talk about Sherrod Brown out of Ohio.
Katie Porter, but I think Katie Porter just doesn't have.
And then you would have
like attorney like
you would have. I don't think Bernie would run again. I mean, I don't think so. I can't say that. There'd probably be a draft Bernie movement by some people. Elizabeth Warren. But again, and of course, it does come down to, do you agree with this? If Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, and right now he's clearly the front runner, and we said before, bears repeating, in my research, and it's limited, but it's somewhat about as good as I can make it, there is nothing that would preclude Donald Trump from running for president other than his own death or his own refusal to run. Criminal charges, prison, nothing would stop him at this point. But if Donald Trump is the nominee, the election will be very different than if Ron DeSantis or another Republican is there. Because Trump is 2 things. Trump has a track record, right? President that you either approve of or disapprove of. And Trump has a name recognition factor that you either, and a whole lifestyle that goes with that. So I don't know what gives Republicans hope that if Trump lost to Biden, and I don't know what would give them hope that he could win. I mean, he can win the Republican primary. Can he win the national election? Well, anything's possible, I suppose. And you said it before. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Where does that go? I thought that was interesting. You've talked about it before. Remember, you talked about the end of Plot for America, where those ballots disappear, and then you have Succession, which is paralleling real life, where 100,000 ballots are burnt. They literally they torch the place. And Rudy. Something happened to Rudy this week, but then it kind of faded. And you have to be careful. I got all excited. There was some report that something happened, and I found it was completely false. That's one of the problems with social media. That's why you have to be really careful what you pass on, because certainly there are a lot of liberal organizations out there that get a little carried away and get a little premature in what they've done. But Rudy did. It was one of his people, though. He did get charged with something sexual this week, I think.
Right.
That is real. America's Mayor Swoon. A moment, right? There was a moment when in 9/11, if that's all you knew him by, where he looked pretty good. Now there's a lot of talk that he was not that good before that. People in New York knew that, but we didn't.
Right.
So there's nothing I can do.
Firefighters, the right type of walkie-talkies.
There's nothing I could do, Brian, tonight to talk you into voting for or supporting Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. Nothing that
Nothing.
could move you.
Nothing. There's nothing you can do.
And that's what that it's just, and it still amazes me, and I'm sure it does everybody who listens to this show. You probably have both. You probably have family members and friends, or at least former friends, or at least former associates who are backing Donald Trump. And I just look and I say, why? I mean, I know why. I mean, I suppose, but I just don't see it. And I don't see how they can't separate the fact of Donald Trump does not represent the old Republican values. But see, here's where I got tricked. It's not the old Republican values that are on there anymore. It's these new MAGA values that he does represent. And I don't think he believes in them. I don't think he believes in anything other than Donald Trump. And you talk about somebody who would do anything to win. That is Donald Trump. Now, let me ask you a question again, Brian. Go inside his head. We're not psychiatrists. You're not supposed to analyze people that you don't have on the couch. Do you think he really believes that election was stolen? And I don't know. I sometimes I think he doesn't, and sometimes I think he does. I don't know. What's your take on that?
I mean, I think somebody who lies like that, I think he knows, but he will do some rationalization. He'll try to say, okay, I'm lying, but I'm going to make this a truth. I'm going to try to force it somehow, or come up with something. No, he knew. I think he said he knew when he said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. He knew just from that statement that what he was doing would be wrong. He said I could get away with it, so he knew. It was
I think the fact that he's such a narcissist, he probably can't understand how America wouldn't vote for him, right?
Right. Yeah, but
the other thing,
Dave, the very fact he had to cheat was a good indicator that he knew that the truth.
I don't. But what I'm saying, I go back and forth. The other thing that makes me think that maybe because he's not a very smart person, he might really think, I won once, how could I not win the second time? I mean, he might be that friggin' whatever out of it.
He lost twice. Well,
I'd like to say that, but he didn't. He won once and he lost once, because the reason he won is because we have the Electoral College. And again, we could devote 572 plus shows to the Electoral College, and it's in the Constitution. So you have to change it that way. And nobody is going to be willing to Republicans to come on the other side, because they cannot win a national election popular vote.
Right.
They cannot, and they cannot win. And so there you go. I've said it before. I'll say it tonight. We'll see how I've been wrong. I think I've been wrong more on Trump than I've been right, probably in my political predictions. But I'm going to say again, it's going to come down to a series of states, and they're going to be the Midwestern states. So I know Pennsylvania is technically not a Midwestern state, but I'm going to throw Pennsylvania in there, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio. And you said it, you went to Bowling Green, you're out there. Ohio's now pretty much a Republican state, but it still has some large cities, Cincinnati, which maybe Columbus, I don't know. That's going to be where the election's held, because the South is going to be Republican. The coasts are going to be Democrat. The far West is going to be Republican, and the Southwest is going to be divided. You have a question in New Mexico and Arizona. Texas is still, unless there's a tremendous influx of people to Austin, unless Willie Nelson brings another couple 100,000 down there to attend one of his picnics. And so there you are. It leaves those Midwestern states. And so we shall see what we shall see. Well,
Right.
Brian, as always, it's been interesting. It's been fun. I
Certainly
hope people
has.
listened. I hope you got something out of it, even if it's not anything we say. It's more thought provoking,
Right.
kinds of things
A lot
that
of
we think of.
speculation too.
And you get a chance to vent. You get a chance to now next week. No, I'm sorry. June. What is it? No, I'm sorry. June 17th. I have a real dilemma, but I think I could do the show, right? Which I'm leading. But they're going to have a 50th anniversary tribute concert at the Kennedy Center for Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On." But I think I'll do the show. I've listened to what's going on. But
Well,
that's
we'll put it on for you. Okay.
well, yeah. I mean, and
It's a great
But,
video. That it's just I've seen that one. That's just tremendous. So listen, Dave. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and thanks to those who were incognito because we always have a few. So those people, if you enjoyed being here tonight, please subscribe. We can use every subscriber we can get, and who knows? Maybe we'll throw a video in during the week. We'll upload it. If you haven't seen our video from a few days back, we did have a very interesting video. CNN Part 2, and did real well with views. So
now
if you haven't
that's
seen
something
it,
I'm not quite ready to sign off yet. I want to ask, and this goes out to people here. Obviously, they're willing to watch on a Saturday night. And Tuesday night we didn't have a lot of live audience, but it certainly had a follow-up audience. And I wonder, is Saturday night, and not that we're going to change it. I mean, we're a family of Saturday nighters, but is that the best night? I mean, and no one knows. It's sort of somebody mentioned newspapers. Like in newspapers, we pretty much knew. Well, I ask you, Brian, again, being every person, what was the biggest day of circulation for a newspaper? Do you know?
anytime, anywhere in the United States.
It was same for every paper.
Well, I know that obviously with the population increases, it's going to give it a greater circulation, but I would guess 69 moon landing.
No, it's interesting. You went that route. It was always Wednesday. Wednesday's paper had the largest circulation. Do you know why?
Because those had the ads for jobs, right, or something.
Not jobs ads, food ads.
Food ads. Okay.
And so you also had the smallest circulating paper. Do you know what day that was?
For the smaller papers.
No, it's the smallest circulation. If Wednesday was the largest, there was also a day that was the smallest. Would you like to hazard
I
a
would
guess on that?
Saturday.
Saturday's correct. And this is why there used to be an old political adage. If you're a politician or in politics or in city government or state government, and you have something bad you want to say that reflects bad, hold the press conference on Friday because no one will pay attention to Saturday. My point was not to talk about newspapers on that. I'm sure it's the same thing with social media. There's probably a best day for, not necessarily for everyone, but for this program, but for the foreseeable future, because a couple of people said, are you going to switch to Tuesdays? And I said, no, that's not what we're doing. We're doing some other experiment. And that's it. I'm done.
All right, Dave, and so am I. I want to thank everybody. Dave, I'm going to shut down so you won't hear me, but I'll get a hold of you during the week. Well, maybe we'll try. I'm actually taking a personal day on Monday, so I'm thinking maybe Monday we'll do
Whatever. Just get a hold of me. I'm here.
because I still want to do something on Andrea Mitchell with MSNBC. I'm really upset with what she did, but
right.
I'll get back to you on that. All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks everybody for watching, listening, and goodbye.
Yep.